Hey, what's up, guys? Coming at you once again with the newer Poise Breakpoint. I just finished testing all of this, and this is actually painful to test all of these numbers by hand. I wish people who data mine could get this done quicker, but here we are. I tested all of this on PlayStation. I just finished. I highlighted in yellow the changes I noticed for all the new breakpoints. There's a lot of things that are noticeably different, like kind of huge deal. So let's start right away. So I'm gonna again give the little disclaimer. R1s, running R1s and crouch R1s have the same value. R2s, running R2s, same value, same thing. Shield poking and one-handed R1 share the same value. And there could be an error margin of 1 poise because when you test in game you don't see the decimal numbers, so sometimes decimal numbers can introduce an error of 1 poise, so keep that in mind. Although all the numbers you see here are have been tested in game, so there are definitely some combinations that will grant you like the correct amount given the number, which basically means that uh, most likely every number that you see here are going to be accurate, but there might be some of them where you need one more poise depending on your armor and your decimal values in your armor combination. So basically all the numbers here should be accurate, but there could be sometimes an error of point something, which gives an error of 1 poise. So with all that being said, there could be some mistakes here and there. This is done by hand, so mistakes are always possible, but I'm fairly confident that these numbers are accurate. Okay, so let's go into it. Oh yeah, also final disclaimer, not all attacks within the same class share the same values. Sometimes some weapons have a different animations for a particular R2 or something, and can change here and there, but for the most part all the numbers you see here are for standard attack. So here we go. Daggers, same thing as before. I don't think the daggers changed, so not too much to talk about here. Let's go straight to claws. Claws have changed. Claws have been buffed, so they went for an R1 poise damage of 55, which was prior to that 41. The one-handed R2 went from 82 to 109, and pretty much the claws have been buffed across the board. What's notable here is the actually across everything, one-handed jumping R2 still always stuns no matter what you're using. So no matter what your weapon of choice, you can always stun someone with a jumping R2. It doesn't matter if it's one or two-handed. So that's good to know. Let's see here. What else is notable for the claws? A claws, again, there's always some weird interaction because claws, are paired weapons. So when you pair your actual weapon and you do an R1, for instance, you get a poise damage of 64 actually, and you need 65 to tank it. But then when you have two pairs, so basically 4 claws, and you have like one different one in each hand, for instance, well, your power stance attack, which is I think it might be the same animation for like a two-handed R1 with paired normal attacks. So the two-handed attack, and then power stance L1, which is the same animation. It's just you have two pairs of claws, and this one gives 82. So there's always this weird interactions with fist and claws and paired weapons. So you would have to pay attention in a fight between like to see if the person you're fighting has actually two pairs or not. But yeah, those are the notable changes. Rapiers heavy nerf for the poise damage. Let's see here. I have the old numbers next to me as well. So Rapier's one-handed R1 went from 55 to 45. The two-handed R1 went from 71 to 58. So breakpoint going down quite significantly. I think this is a good nerf for the poise damage. Also, I noticed that the power stance jump L1, which hits multiple times, stunned 132, but could be tanked at 133. So weird little interaction here. And I've also noted that actually I've not written this down here at all, but all charge R2s throughout this whole page stun. So it doesn't matter which weapon you're using. If you have a dagger, a one-handed charge R2 would always stun, fully charge R2. So same thing with the rapiers, the claws. No matter the weapon, you can always stun someone with a fully charged R2. Okay, the whips. I did not note any changes for the whip. So let's move on to Twin Blade. Twin Blade were weird. Like, Twin Blades were kind of all over the place. Let me pull out the old number. So Twin Blade R1 are unchanged. So before the patch, it was 68, and now it's still 68. Whereas, say, the one-handed R2 used to stun, and now it does or it will do 116, and you need 117 to tank it, right? So some weird changes here. Twin blades, since they hit multiple times, sometimes it's tricky to make it stun. Like, for instance, power stance jump L1 will stun, full bull goat, but at the same time it's kind of difficult in an actual fight to hit all the little hits from the jumping L1 because all of them need to connect. So that should be noted as well. But the twin blades ultimately got a poise nerf, so that's to be noted. Okay, now let's go to fists. Fist did not seem to have changed. The thing though with fist is that because the twin blades and the straight sword, curved sword, katanas, axes, and spears have been nerfed, and the fist are unchanged, and the fist also got a speed buff. This is a huge buff to the fist weapon class because the fist weapon class now can stun with a one-handed R2, whereas let's jump straight away to straight sword and company. The one-handed R2 from straight sword does not stun anymore, so you need 116 to tank a one-handed R2 from a straight sword, curved sword, katanas, axes, and spears. Whereas the fist weapon, you're never going to be able to tank a one-handed R2. And the one-handed R2 for the fist is now faster than any of the R2s in this class. So a really big change here. Fist becoming like a much stronger option than before, where before they were fairly irrelevant. Now with these buffs and the fact that the poise did not change for the fist and the poise did get nerfed for pretty much all medium weapons, this is a huge deal. Now, for the straight sword, the bread and butter for the straight sword is the power stance jump L1 that still stuns full bull goat, and then you will still stun people in 2 L1s, because it does 69 poise. So if you do 69 times 2, it's gonna be more than 133. So the power stance L1, 2 L1 was still always poise or break someone in 2 L1s. So technically the straight sword meta did not really change despite the straight sword receiving a poise nerf. The only thing that really changes here is if you are playing a one-handed straight sword, now your one-handed straight sword is now pretty shit, doing 57 poise damage, needing 58 to tank, whereas before this number was 68. So that's to be noticed. Also, even the two-handed R2s for any of these does not poise break full bull goat anymore, so you need 127 to tank it. All right, another big nerf. Let's go to the HTS, the heavy thrusting sword. Heavy thrusting sword, I did not realize, but they got a massive nerf. And actually, I think the biggest nerf that came to HTS in this patch, like HTS got a huge nerf. They got the jump attack combo removed, they got the crouch attack slowed down, and they got a poise nerf. And I think what hurts it the most is not the jump attack combo, and it's not even, or it could be the jump attack combo, but coupled especially with that lesser poise. Honestly, I don't think the heavy thrusting sword needed a crouch attack nerf. I think the crouch attack was not, that amazing or anything. It was just a normal crouch attack, but now the fact that you don't stun everyone with a jumping R1 two-handed, which was the case before. So before the patch, a jumping attack with two-handed jumping R1 with always stun. Now it only does 82 poise damage, and you need 83 to tank it. So that's actually a big difference. Like, that's a huge difference. The running attack for the R2, right, does 120 or 126. You need 127 to tank it, whereas before it would always stun. Two-handed R2 still always stuns, though, at least. So when you do a two-handed R2 running attack, you'll always stun. So you can still use the running attack reliably, the running R2 reliably when you're two-handing the weapon. So that's that. But all in all, kind of a big nerf to HTS, like pretty significant. And keep in mind, the one-handed R1 is also the shield poking poise damage, so you only need 64 to tank a heavy thrusting sword shield poke. So again, very heavy nerf poise damage wise for the heavy thrusting sword. Okay, let's go to flail and hammers. Flail and hammers used to share, which is why I have them together. They used to share the same values, and now they don't. So flail and hammers now have different values. The flail now do less poise damage than the hammer class. So whereas before they both did 88, right? Now the flail does 82 for the one-handed R1. Also, another weird thing that I noticed, I don't know if this is intentional, but the one-handed jumping R1 for the flail and the hammer does 123 for the flail and 132 for the hammer, whereas the two-handed jumping R1 does the same exact thing as the one-handed. So weird interaction here. The jumping R1 doesn't matter if you're two-handing your weapon or one-handing your weapon, the poise damage is actually the same. So honestly, I'm not sure that this is intentional, given how we got like some new glitches introduced to the game with this patch. I think some of these numbers might not necessarily be intentional. So jumping R1 sharing the same values here. And I noticed the same thing for the halberd. I don't know if I did a mistake last time I checked, but the R1, you needed 125 poise to tank it, which is the same as before. And the jumping R1 did the same amount of poise damage as the R1. Now, I don't know if it's something I did not see before in my previous testing, but I noticed it this time during my testing, that basically the R1 and the running R1 and the jumping R1 all shared the same poise damage, which is different from everything else, you know? Like, if you compare an R1 here, see 64 poise needed to tank, whereas the jumping R1 96, claws, an R1 55, and then a jumping R1 81, daggers, you name it. Usually it's all different numbers. So strange interaction here for halberd sight. They both shared the same thing. So I don't know if this is intentional. Like I said, this patch introduced some glitches, so I don't know if all of these numbers are actually intentional. Now, as far as the great swords, great spear, curved great sword, great hammer, great axe, colossal, all of these will always stun full bull goat. And when we say always stun, always keep that in mind. This is neutral, like stunning someone in neutral, meaning that they're not in any form of hyper armor, because hyper armor will change the interaction. But when we're talking always stunning, we mean stunning someone that's in neutral position, so only passive poise is active. So these are pretty much the new changes for 1.08. Now, like I said, I don't know if all these numbers are actually intentional, so they might actually change in the hotfix when we get one, so we will have to re-verify these. Since I literally just compiled these numbers as I'm making this, I have not even taken a look to see like what would be the new go-to breakpoint, since things have changed quite a bit. When you have heavy thrusting sword R1 being able to be tanked at 64, the jumping R1 being able to be tanked at 96, the two-handed R1 at 83, and then the power stance L1 at 69 for these, two-handed R1 at 75. There's a lot of different breakpoints. Like, we don't really have like one streamlined number, so I don't actually know like which breakpoint you should go for. I would say a minimum to get at least now. You should have a minimum of let's see here. For the power stance L1 for these, right? This is always a good breakpoint. So 69, beautiful number. 69 could be a good breakpoint, a minimum at least, I would say. So 69, I would say, could be a minimum right now. But I would probably recommend higher than that, at least like to be able to tank like a two-handed curved sword with 75. But yeah, you guys can tell me what you think we should be running for a base poise breakpoint or amount of poise to rock for most situations. This is going to be it for today. I hope you enjoy this quick but tedious update on the poise changes. Took a while to test, but here we go. All right, guys. Thanks everyone for watching, and take care.